I'm DJ, and welcome to One Shots Tavern, a TTRPG podcast where we seek better ways to tell your story. You may notice that Andrew is not with me today. We are changing up our format in case you missed it when we announced it. Today, I am joined by so many robots for Songs of the Spellbound Sea, a adventure supplement, and more than that supplement for 5th edition. Welcome, so many robots.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. Really happy to talk to you tonight and talk about D&D and the book and everything.
Yeah. So I got a good look at your website. For those of you who are listening, somanyrobots.com. On there, you have a ton of very interesting classes, subclasses, spells, lots of stuff. How long have you been publishing in the 5th edition space, or just publishing in general, or writing in general?
So I started homebrewing in like a serious way maybe 2 years ago or so. And I created the website maybe 4 or 5 months after that, started committing to a schedule of putting a lot of stuff up. It sort of started, I had done a couple of things here and there, and then somebody gave me the idea that would become the Troubadour class, and it seized my brain. I had to make it. I spent a month making it, and then once I'd made the thing, I was like, well, crap. I love this. I think it's great.
Yeah.
If I want people to see it, I have to keep making stuff. And that was 2 years ago, and now I do this full time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about the Troubadour class because I was reading it and it's incredibly interesting. Tell me what separates the Troubadour from Bard or from the other classes that seem to kind of influence it, and the things that don't come from 5th edition that influence it, because it's fantastic. It's super fun.
So it started with just the notion of take the bard, chop it down to a half-caster, and see how much other fun stuff you can fit in if you free up that budget. So I started working on it from that lens, and a few other ideas were pretty obvious. It's a half-caster now, which there's not really a bardic half-caster. It doesn't super make sense to be like a ranger or a paladin, a mostly martial half-caster. So what can I do to make a half-caster that is pure support? So that's where the concordance feature comes in, buffing their allies. Mystic songs, which is the other big headline feature, is singing songs to create auras to buff their allies or debuff their enemies. And that felt like an obvious thing that bards should be able to do. It makes a lot of thematic sense. I know that in 3.5 and Pathfinder, bards had a similar mechanic. I actually never really played a lot of 3.5 or Pathfinder.
Oh, so that's where I started out.
Yeah, I wasn't directly pulling on that, but I'm aware of the sort of convergent evolution there with the way the ideas went.
Yeah. So with Spellbound Sea. I got that. Yeah, Spellbound Sea. Tell me about this project. Because you have put a ton of work into this. Just from the preview PDF. It's beautiful. It looks super great. And well, here, let's start off. Tell me about the nautical ship battles, because I think that's the part I'm the most excited for. Because I run often a Sea of Sorrows campaign, which is a Shadowfell, Ravenloft campaign. It's Dread Pirates, right? 5th edition combat at sea is fine. Tell me about your improvements with Spellbound Sea, because that sounds super exciting, and I'm probably going to use it.
So this is actually the first homebrew I ever created.
Oh wow.
And that was like 5 years ago now. which was, I started running a campaign right around when Ghost of the Saltmarsh came out. That's where Wizards published their rules for naval combat. And I took a look at those and I thought they were fine. They work. They
Yeah.
don't give you a lot to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they sort of those rules kind of want to be the base for a bigger expansion like Spellbound Sea
Yes.
has in it. So 5 years ago, I wrote a set of naval combat rules, ran them in a few of my own games. They were not very good. They did not play very well. They were too complicated. They were too finicky. I didn't know what I was doing. That was a long time ago. So for this project, I knew I wanted to include seafaring adventure rules, naval combat rules. So I went back, deleted about 3/4 of that old document, started writing it from scratch,
Yeah.
and sort of developed from the thesis that I want something that plays and feels a lot like normal 5e. So it's not weird combat rules. It's not, a different action system. There's no alternate resolution. You move the ship, you shoot the cannons. It's
Right.
but in order to keep every player of the party engaged, right, you don't want to give every player their own ship. So I added the officer roles thing. It wound up, uh, the goal with the officer roles is to come up with something that overlaps enough that you can get by with missing officers. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
essential to have every single position filled. Um, but also that are all distinct enough that everybody's having fun, everybody's got something to do, and that it gets a little bit hectic
Yeah.
in the middle of combat. So right now, the rules that are in the book, I wrote these up. I released them under the title The Seafarer's Manual a couple of months ago. I've been putting them through a bunch of playtests since then. Um, what's currently in the sample is from version 0.1, the very first new release
Oh,
of
okay.
those. Before the book actually gets published, that's probably the thing that's going to get the most polish. I think there's going to be 6 or more rounds of revision on there.
Yeah.
Where there's a whole lot of subsystems I want to add. The plan is to get floating strongholds, upgradable ships,
That's
um,
awesome. Yeah.
full, like much bigger sets of ships you can encounter, and sea monsters, and all kinds of great stuff like that.
That's really awesome. And funny. I always do this. I always talk about the things that I've written as well, right? Um, but like there's a parallel because I did a Kickstarter. I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna talk about the name or anything like that. I'm still working on it. It's going to the editor, whatever. Um, in it, I wanted to do vehicle combat.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it to be pretty drop into whatever, right? System. Because, there are so many great systems out there. I was mainly inspired because I ran ship combat. I ran ship combat using the Ghost of Saltmarsh rules for a group that was not super experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up hard, right? Because
Yeah.
they've got to reference a sheet that is a pain. Right, you have the sailing ship, you have the warship, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, got to roll, and it was clunky, right? And so that was something I wanted to do was like I wanted to take vehicle combat, and when I say vehicle combat, like death race, like that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and simplify it. So what is interesting to me is like it sounds like you want to do something similar and that you are working to do something similar with this ship combat. Um and I think there's this really awesome part of that. Something that you said specifically of like upgrading your ships. Um Something that is sorely lacking in 5th edition.
Yeah.
For a game that allows you so many options for your subclass and your class and your race, all of that stuff, right? And your features and all of that, to look at it and to realize how much is actually missing
Mm-hmm.
on the front end of customization of the world around you, right? I think it was one of the few times that I've actually run into it where they did something that worked, was in what is it? Waterdeep, the Dragon Heist. When you get Troll
Yeah.
Skull Manor, like you're pretty open to do stuff with it, but even that was pretty lacking. So tell
Yeah.
me about customizing your ships and these home bases, because I think a lot of players are super hungry to be able to change and affect the world around them and the tools in which they are traveling the world.
Yeah. So caveat that this is not published yet, and substantially not written yet. This is something I'm still working on. But the vision I have for this, right, is ships are awesome. And when the party gets their own ship, that's almost inevitably going to be their home base. It's going to be
Yeah.
their traveling stronghold, where they lay their head at night. And so it needs to be upgradable the way a stronghold should be. So there's probably going to be a few different types of upgrades available, right? You can imagine stuff that is more, I say conventional stronghold, but of course, Wizards has not published actual official stronghold rules for 5e,
Yeah.
but there are a few different homebrews out there that do sort of things. So, like, add, a laboratory to your ship, add a barracks for some marines, add an enchanting room or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, and then also stuff that you would think more is like traditional ship upgrades, right? Get some better cannons, get some faster sails,
Yeah.
get a copper plated hull, whatever. And some of that, if I remember it, I think Tasha's has some stuff like that.
A little bit, yeah.
Um, but it kind of needs to be baked into the system with proper support and intended as something that's going to sit at the center of your campaign.
Absolutely. Uh, Especially because, like, often it'll be like, especially with like potion making in Tasha's or any of these, like, and you can do this. It's not super fleshed out, and it's
Mhm.
more of like this very like surface level thing that most people are going to read past, and it's not comprehensive enough for the dungeon master to go, all right, cool, let's do this.
Yeah.
Um, or to present it to their players, right? Because they might not present it to their players due to the vagueness of it. Right? Because if it's not fleshed out enough in order to explain it to a beginner player and them to grasp it, in my opinion, there's a problem with the system, right? Because in the end, we're playing a game of storytelling with our
Mhm.
friends. And because of that, like technically anything should be possible, right? Um and it feels so often that it's not. So to have this, third party like supplement to kind of like boost people's games and add that connection, I think that's fantastic. So, what is your favorite part about Spellbound Sea so far? I know that you're still writing it, you're still, tweaking, you're still play testing, you're doing all the stuff but everyone's always got their favorite part of their project that they're working on. So what's yours?
That's actually a super hard question. So it's about 80% done at this point.
Yeah,
Uh, Pending whatever stretch goals the Kickstarter campaign managed to hit.
of
A lot
course,
of that's
yeah.
going to add more content. Um, what is my favorite? I do love the seafaring rules, right? It's a
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to add into my games 5 years ago. I still want to have it in my games now. Um, all three of the classes feel like my babies to me.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased with all of them and how they have all turned out. I think the mini settings are something that's going to turn out super cool. Um, I don't have one of those in the sample, but what those are, the the book is themed around the Spellbound Sea, right? A big,
Right.
cool ocean with all kinds of cool stuff you can find there. But I'm not expecting DMs to just put an entire new ocean in the world. I'm not writing a complete campaign setting for them. So instead, what I've got are the mini settings, where each one is sort of themed around an island or a cluster of islands within an ocean. That a DM can take this one small piece of game world and just drop it in.
Yeah.
It'll fit in. It'll have a couple of tweaks. Maybe you want to tie it into the pantheon in your world. Okay, make these changes. You want to tie it into the existing species? Make these changes. But for the most part, the intention is something that is nice, self-contained, evocative, with good adventure hooks that you can immediately go to take this and integrate it into your game and get off and running.
Yeah, I find that so important too for supplements. I either either they put too much into the location, right? And then it's like it's too far removed from whatever campaign, or somebody has to do too much work, right, in order to make it fit into the campaign that they're running. Or it, feels a little bit hollow. So like to have essentially the drag and drop
Mm-hmm.
for your micro settings, it's so useful and beneficial. It's one of my favorite part about third party supplements, because you would wish right off the bat that the game that you're playing gave you all the tools to, and all of the intrigue and all of the fun. Um, but nowadays it doesn't feel like they quite dive in that far. But that's where you come in, and you get to stretch your creative imagination and give these tools, these adventure hooks, these fun little tidbits for the players and the game masters. And I love that. Tell me, and I don't know how to pronounce this, the axolotl. It's an axolotl person. Tell me about
Yes.
that, because I believe that if my wife's character dies in our Sea of Sorrows game, she's going to want to switch to this.
So the Achayotl is an axolotl folk. Um, it was a suggestion that somebody gave to me in Discord. It sounded really fun. I started working on it. The name itself is like, I forget exactly where I came up with it, but it's like a mashup of like 4 or 5 different Mixtec words that kind of makes. I think it axolotl itself, I think, means water dog in Nahuatl, if I remember right.
Yeah,
So
something like
it's
that.
a play on that. I forget exactly what roots I used to make the word. But the conceit behind the species is it is adorable. First off, it's a cute, awesome little axolotl
Oh,
person,
absolutely.
and B, like the one thing that if people know any facts about axolotls, it's that they have this transformation in their life cycle. Right, the story goes, I think it was a French naturalist, came to the New World, found them, took a bunch back to Europe, and what he put into the box were these adorable pink frilly little things, and what he took out of the box at the other end were like brown, black, no frills, terrestrial, didn't swim anymore
Yeah,
salamanders. And so I took that as the central mechanical idea for the species, is this notion of morphing between their subclasses. And it's not something that can happen accidentally. It's not something that's going to happen without the player's consent, pretty much. But it gives you a way to actually change between. I think I call them lagoon and landbound. The lagoon and landbound forms. So you can actually change your subclass in play.
that's really
Fun fact:
awesome.
as I was doing the research, I discovered that it's a myth that axolotls even do this. They don't. Turns out that naturalist had a different species of salamander in his box all along. Well, it's still
That's really
fun.
great. Yeah, because I was thinking, I was like, man, I'm pretty sure that, like, yes, technically, an axolotl is always in this almost tadpole form, right? It's like it's a
Hmm.
somewhere in between a tadpole and like an adult form. Essentially, axolotls never leave their adolescent form,
Yeah.
unless a certain hormone is introduced to the axolotl in which they will have a transformation, which is crazy because it does not happen in nature. But it
Hmm.
is something that you can induce and kind of like push onto an axolotl. Um,
Yeah.
which is weird. Like, why.
They're super
But
interesting.
I do love that that's in there.
Mhm.
Because even if you did it on accident, right? Like that itself kind of like some axolotl fans can be like, that tracks.
I mean, if you are playing an Achioto and like you and your DM are on the same page about this, and 4 weeks into the campaign you surprise the rest of the party, that sounds wonderful. That sounds delightful.
Oh, absolutely. It's those little moments of surprise in a campaign that really like are the moments that people hold on to, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, well, what else do you want to tell me? Or sorry, not me. I mean, obviously, please tell me everything. What do you want the viewers to know about your Kickstarter? What maybe stretch goals? Like, what is it you want to
Mhm.
talk about to dive into it?
So at the top, you described it a little bit as an adventure supplement, which is true, but also I do want to point out it's probably 2/3 or 3/4 player options. Um, right? It's
Which is always
it's
awesome. People love that.
three full classes. I think the number of subclasses is going to vary a lot based on the number of stretch goals we hit, but it'll be at least 20, maybe quite a bit
Oh
more.
wow.
About 200 spells are going to be in the book. Something like 50 pages at least, probably more like 60 or 70. Um, so just a ton of stuff in there for players to
Yeah.
add to flesh out your own characters. In terms of stretch goals, I think there's a bunch of stuff in there I'm really excited for, and I hope we get to. There are some really cool collaborations that I have lined up. Some other brewers are going to create some items to go in, some monsters to go in. I've got somebody lined up to create some music to go along with the book. If we hit those goals, um, there are 4 more mini settings available through stretch goals. Um,
Wow.
so by default, the book's gonna have I think 2 to start with, and I'm pretty sure the first stretch goal will get hit. So I'm planning pretty concretely around 3. Then there's 3 more that are all options. Um, each one of those is gonna come with at least 2 more subclasses, maybe as many as 5. Um, each one's gonna add more monsters. I don't I'm not planning at this point to add more spells for them, but I might. Each one's going to add another page of magic items. So just the amount of content that's in there is going to keep ballooning as we go up and up. In terms of stuff that is pretty interesting that I haven't seen other campaigns do so far, one thing I'm really excited is Baldur's Gate 3 mods. Um, I don't know if you've played Baldur's Gate 3. Basically, everybody in the
I
world
have.
has. Um,
Yeah.
so one of my community members was incredibly awesome and has already modded the Troubadour into the game. So if somebody owns
That's
Baldur's Gate
really
3,
awesome.
they can go try the Troubadour right now.
That's
And
crazy.
inspired by that, I want to put all the rest of the book in there if I can. And it's not like
Yeah.
central to the pitch. That is not what we're raising money for, but that is something I've got more Baldur's Gate 3 mods sprinkled into the stretch goals. I know some modders I can reach out to. So hopefully we'll get a fair amount of this content put in there, which is super sweet.
That's really awesome, especially because it's like it gives the players like a little taste of like, hey, this is how this class or subclass is going to play. This is how like the spell is going to work. And you don't have to do any of you don't have to create a game, right?
Mhm.
To do it.
Yeah.
There's already a game there that allows you to instead like just throw your stuff into it with mods, which is
Mhm.
amazing. I think what's really interesting so far is like everything you've told me about this supplement um feels as though you can take the supplement itself, just that one book, and technically you could run a campaign using that. Um, and well, you can take, your species, you can take your classes, um, and obviously the rest is up to the GM to come up with the world and stuff. But like, it seems as though like a very jam packed supplement, which is very impressive. And
Thank
I
you.
love. Um, I'm very interested in this. So very cool. Okay, so we've talked about the book. We've talked about the Kickstarter. Let's talk about you for a bit. Um,
Sure.
earlier you said you never played much of 3.5. So what was your introduction to tabletop role playing?
So I, as with many people, started playing D&D when I was in middle school. I forget if it was seventh or eighth grade. It was one of them. Um, I am old enough that that was with handed down second edition books from my older brother.
All
So
right.
I got started on second edition AD&D, and I played that for 5 or 6 years when I was a kid. And then I sort of set it down when I left home. Got a real job in the real world. Have didn't have the right people around me. I just kind of stepped away. And then maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I came back to it. I actually was playing one of the Owlcat Pathfinder computer RPGs, which was
Okay.
super
Yeah.
super
Yeah. Yeah.
good, and it gave me the itch to play D&D
Yep.
again. And so I went out, and at the time I was living in the Bay Area, I went out and I found some folks to play with. Um, got started doing a bunch of Adventurers League, used that to recruit and put together a home campaign. So that was, 6-ish years ago, something like that. I've been playing with the same folks ever since. Sort of dove back in head first. Um, yeah, it's been a huge part of my life, and especially with the Kickstarter now, an increasingly
Yeah.
central part.
Yeah. I mean, I could relate, I started in high school. It was with 3.5 at that point. I don't know how many years ago that was. It was a lot, 15 or something like that. And yeah, at the time it caught me, but it didn't like catch me as much as it did later on. It was
Mhm.
something I did for fun back then. And then I mean I still do it for fun, of course, but all of a sudden like I want to say it was around 2 years before the pandemic. Start measuring time that way. It was about 2 years before the pandemic, and basically, we all grew. We all finally became adults, and it was like, oh, hey, let's all start hanging out as much as possible again. And it was every Sunday we'd go to one of our friends' houses, and we'd start playing, and
Mhm.
it was just it affected me big time, in a way that it didn't in high school. And from there, it was just games all the time. And then last year, I got fired from my job and I needed income, so I became a game master for hire. And then it just became literally my entire life to where I'm running like 6 games a week. And I love it. It's my favorite
Nice.
thing. And I'm so glad to get to do it. And then we started the podcast and all of that, and it's just history now. Um,
Mhm.
so have you played any other games besides Pathfinder and Fifth Edition? Like, what other games inspire you?
So in like in a dedicated campaign, not particularly. That time's been AD&D or 5e. I have done one shots in a bunch of other systems, and I've read a bunch of other systems. I've played a little Starfinder, which was not a conscious influence on the naval combat rules, but you can definitely see there's
Yeah.
some some similarities there. So I played a little Starfinder, played a little Pathfinder. I have not had the chance to play Pathfinder Second Edition, but I've read chunks of the book. The one fun detail about writing uh, both the Swashbuckler and Blood Rager classes is I made a point of not reading any Pathfinder materials at all while I was working on those because I didn't want to accidentally rip off anything that Paizo had already done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So a little bit of those. I've played a little Call of Cthulhu, some passing familiarity with Vampire the Masquerade. Um, I think what drew me back into tabletop games was that I had this deep love for second edition from when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
5e feels more like second edition than anything else on the market does.
Right.
Much more so than 3.5 or fourth did.
Yeah.
So it brings back that same sense of adventure that I really loved then. And I wouldn't be making this book if I thought 5e was perfect, if I thought there was nothing worth adding to it.
Right.
But I think it is an extremely sturdy and reliable foundation to build on top of. It particularly the base design in the core rules in the player's handbook, they got a lot of things right. And it's really good.
Yeah, it's funny because like I don't buy a whole lot of like official materials anymore, but I
Mhm.
have been buying so many third party things to run in my games. Whether it's, backing people through Kickstarter, or it's, you go to Gen Con or you go to, whatever other game show, and you walk up and you have a conversation with someone and they're like, yeah, so here's this thing that I've done. And you're like, oh, that's perfect. I've had that exact problem that needed to be fixed. Thank you for your time. I leave with more books than I can afford. Uh and but it's the part of Dungeons and Dragons that I think I love the most is the third party community support. Which
Mhm.
is obviously why everyone one of the reasons why everyone got so mad back last year in January during the
Mhm.
whole OGL controversy, right?
Yep.
And then luckily, we were loud and angry enough because we love third-party publishers so much.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, now Wizards of the Coast is going, they really like third-party publishers. Maybe we should start offering third-party publisher books. Hmm. Which is awesome, because it is introducing these independent books, these third party publishers to people who normally wouldn't interact with that market, right? Because
Mhm.
a lot of people are still very rooted in D&D Beyond or Roll20, right?
Yep.
Now there's, Demiplane and all that. It's a whole bunch of things. Wait, well, now Demiplane is owned by Roll20, but
Yeah.
you know, um, it's the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, is to have a community go, I think I can tweak that and I can improve that and make
Mhm.
it more fun. And it always is. Right? It's often even solutions to problems you didn't know existed. And
Yes.
that's the best. And I think that's something that you really are tackling in this fairly well. Um, I I'll be honest. I clicked the notify button after we had our first conversation because I was like, "Oh, that's interesting," because people message us and people will be like, "Hey, can you do this and do that?" And um, I really want to like showcase the things that like I'm genuinely interested in.
Mhm.
And this is one of them because I think this is going to get a ton of use in my home games. And I
Nice.
think that a lot of people could get a ton of use of this in their home games.
I sure hope so.
So where can people find you? Uh, Socials, YouTube. What do you
Yeah.
got?
So I am not a YouTuber. In fact, when this goes out, I think it will be the first time ever my face has appeared on a YouTube video. Um, But I'm on basically all the socials. I have the So Many Robots handle, right? Insta, um, the artist formerly known as Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, etc. Um, you can find me on Discord, where I have a Discord that is linked for my website and a bunch of other spots. So many robots.com is my website. It is where it's the primary home for my content. I do try almost everything I release publicly for free. I think one of the keys to 5e's first decade has been great. I think 5e's next decade is going to be better, and I think one of the things that will do that is people starting
Absolutely.
to release more stuff under free licenses. So I try to release as much as I can under CC licenses. That's all on so many robots.com. And of course, folks can follow the Kickstarter. Right, you
Yeah.
can Google Spellbound Sea. That'll get you there. If you want a URL, tinyurl.com/Spellbound Sea will get you there. I'm sure you'll put something in the show notes. So yeah,
Yes, we're going to include all of that in the show notes down below. You can follow So Many Robots. Of course, it is super easy username to find anywhere and everywhere. So many robots.com. We will make sure we have all of that for our viewers, and of course, a link to the Kickstarter, which is the whole reason why you are here today with me. I want to thank you so much for actually joining and coming onto the show. I think that people are going to really enjoy this. I'm going to give you a little bit of time here to kind of plug anything else that you would like to plug before we kind of head out.
I mean, I didn't prepare for plugging other stuff. Obviously, there are tons of other creators who are super worth checking out. I know there are two other Kickstarters going live the same day as mine by awesome creators who I'm excited for. So, if I want to plug anything, I'll just plug everybody who's still making stuff for 5e, right? There are obviously new folks going out, forging new ground, writing new systems. But like I said, I think 5e's got another good decade in it. I think it's got a better decade than the
I
first one.
agree.
Um,
Absolutely. And here's the thing, right? We're coming up to a soft switch, right? To D&D. What do they call it? One D&D. A soft switch, and it's still technically 5th edition but with some changes. Here's the thing. For the past 10 years, everybody has been playing 5th edition, and they've been loving it, and they have been modding it, and they've been making it their own. And every time there is a switch, it doesn't kill the edition that they previously released. In fact, I think it
mhm.
makes it flourish. Last time we had sorry, it's not the last time we had a major one. Last time we had a major one, it was a nightmare. But uh 3.5, right, became Pathfinder, and it grew into this beautiful thing. Starfinder and, Pathfinder 2 and all of that. It developed its own system out of it. And I think you're completely spot on when you say that, the past 10 years has been good, but the next 10 years is going to be better because we have so many creative people coming up in the space like you, like some of the people we've had on the show who are able to look at this and look at the system and go, I am going to make something amazing out of this, because people love Dungeons and Dragons. They love telling stories with their friends. They love, building worlds together and characters they will never use. It's the best part about Dungeons and Dragons. And it's really the spirit to kind of take our creativity and take this building block and to just build off of it. And I want to thank people like you, because it allows me to continue to play the games that I love long after they're no longer officially supported. And I think that is a beautiful service that more people should really be astounded by. So, thank you, Ben, So many robots. I have had an absolute blast. We are going to make sure that we let everyone know. We mostly do TikTok. Is our thing.
Great.
So I will introduce our D&D TikTok following to the Kickstarter, and hopefully you guys go and back this because it looks like it is going to be an incredible project. Ben, thank you so much for joining. Um,
That, thank you so
eh,
much for having me. This was a delight. Really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah. And if you like what we're doing here, everyone, you can head to oneshottavern.com. There you can find our Patreon, all of our socials. You can check out some cool TTRPG themed merch, such as our Coastal Mage Slayer shirt, as well as our Magic Missile tee. And of course, please check out the Patreon. As always, I'm DJ. This is One Shots Tavern. See you next time.